Well now, so it's a very curious thing to be alive in these times. I was sitting in a cafe the other day overlooking the water here in Sausalito, and it was one of those perfect afternoons. The sun was making what the Japanese call komorebi, that is, the light that filters through the leaves of the trees, and it was dancing on the tables. The gulls were making their usual racket, and the whole world was shimmering. And yet at almost every table there sat these marvelous human beings, these incredible organisms, completely captivated, you see, by little glowing rectangles in their hands. Their faces were illuminated not by the sun, but by this strange, cool light from a screen. And I don't say this in a spirit of condemnation at all. A philosopher, after all, is just a sort of intellectual yokel who gawks at things that sensible people take for granted. And this has become something we take for granted. But it is, when you stop to think about it, a profoundly peculiar scene. It put me in mind of this fascinating word we use all the time without a second thought. The word person. As many of you know, it comes from the Latin word persona, which was the mask worn by an actor in a Greco-Roman drama. The mask was designed with a megaphone-shaped mouth so that the actor's voice could project through persona to the back of the amphitheater. So from the very beginning, the person was a role, a device for playing a part in a drama. And of course, we are all playing our parts. We are fathers, mothers, teachers, students, employers, employees. We put on the appropriate mask for the occasion. But what we have now, with these little glowing rectangles, is something altogether new. We have invented a new kind of mask, an extraordinarily convincing and persistent one, the digital self. It is a mask that we wear not just for a few hours on a stage, but perpetually. It is a mask that follows us to bed at night and is the first thing we reach for in the morning. It is a mask that is constantly being adjusted, polished, and presented for the approval of a vast, unseen audience. And this leads to the central question I'd like to explore with you this evening. If the person has always been a role we're playing, what happens when the mask becomes more persistent, more detailed, and in some ways more rewarding than the actor behind it? Are we in danger of forgetting that there is an actor at all? For a long time, I have been talking about the fundamental illusion that plagues our Western civilization, which is the notion that you are a separate ego, an isolated center of consciousness and volition, locked up inside a bag of skin. This feeling of being a skin-encapsulated ego is, I have proposed, a hallucination. It's a social convention that we have mistaken for a fact of nature. It is the root of our feeling of alienation from the universe, our hostility towards nature, and our deep and abiding anxiety. We feel that we are a stranger and afraid in a world we never made. But now we have added another layer to this illusion. On top of the skin-encapsulated ego, we have constructed what I can only call the profile-encapsulated ego. If you feel you are separate from the world outside your skin, you feel doubly separate from the world outside your social media profile. This profile is a curated collection of symbols that we mistake for our actual being. It is a gallery of carefully selected photographs, a list of our supposed interests, a stream of our cleverest thoughts or most righteous opinions. And we confuse this collection of data with ourselves in precisely the same way that we have learned to confuse money with wealth or the menu with the dinner. We are in effect starving on a diet of menus. You see, words and symbols are useful pointers, but they are not the reality they point to. The word water will not quench your thirst, and the collection of images, updates, and likes that constitute your online profile is not you. It is a symbol, a map, a highly edited and stylized representation of you. But we have become so absorbed in polishing the map that we have forgotten the territory. The territory is the actual living, breathing, pulsing organism that is sitting here in this room. But the map, the profile, seems so much more manageable. It doesn't get sick, it doesn't get old, and with the right filter, it never has a bad hair day. It is a fixed and permanent record in a world that is fundamentally impermanent and wiggly. And our frantic clinging to this fixed symbol is a source of enormous and entirely unnecessary suffering. This brings us to another one of our culture's favorite illusions, the idea of life as a journey. We are brought up to believe that life is a pilgrimage with a serious purpose at the end. The goal is to get to that end, to success, to heaven, to retirement, or to whatever grand destination we have been sold. This is drilled into us from the very beginning. You go to kindergarten, and that's a great thing because it prepares you for first grade, and then second grade, and so on. You're always on your way. Then you get to high school, and it's revving up. The thing is coming. Then college, then graduate school. Then you get a job where you have to make a quota, and you're climbing the ladder. And all the time, this great thing is just around the corner. Then one day, you wake up at 40 years old, and you say, "My God, I've arrived. I'm there." And you don't feel very different at all. You feel you've been hoaxed. The digital world is the most perfect expression of this future-oriented anxiety ever devised. The constant pursuit of likes, shares, followers, and comments is a perfect modern example of living for a future goal rather than for the present moment. We post a photograph and then we are in a state of anxious anticipation. How many likes will it get? Who will comment? We are not living in the here and now. We are living in the future validation of our digital performance. Discussed in The Wisdom of Insecurity. Our desperate search for security, for a fixed and stable sense of self that can be validated by others, is precisely what generates our insecurity. The digital world, with its promise of a perfectible permanent record of our lives, is the ultimate dangling carrot. It promises connection and fulfillment, but so often leaves us feeling empty, anxious, and more alone than ever. We are constantly chasing a future state of digital approval that, even when we attain it, is as fleeting as the last ripple in a pond. Philosophers in other fields have a term for this curated, perfect version of ourselves that we project online. They call it the ideal I. This is the person you aspire to be, the flawless reflection you present to the world. And this, my friends, is the dreadful hoax I was just speaking of. The hoax is not just that we are trying to fool others. The far more potent hoax is that we are trying to fool ourselves. We create this polished, witty, beautiful, and successful avatar, and then we look in the mirror and feel a crushing sense of inadequacy for not being able to live up to our own fabrication. This creates a bizarre and painful feedback loop. We feel a lack in our actual lives, so we construct a perfect digital persona to compensate. But then this digital persona becomes the standard against which we judge our actual lives, which of course fall short. This generates what some have called a texistential crisis, a state of perpetual insufficiency where we are constantly aware of the gap between our messy reality and our curated illusion. We are performing an identity so convincingly that we are our own most captivated audience. And in doing so, we create what I have called in another context, a marriage of an illusion with a falsehood. The illusion is the concept of a separate, fixed ego. The falsehood is the phony feeling of strain and effort we exert to maintain this illusion. In the digital world, this strain is constant. It is the anxiety of the performer who can never leave the stage. This has created a technologically enforced version of what the anthropologist Gregory Bateson called a double bind. A double bind is a situation where a person is given contradictory commands and cannot win no matter what they do. The classic example is the command, be spontaneous. If you try to be spontaneous, you are not being spontaneous. You are simply following an order. The digital world issues this exact kind of command. The great imperative of our online culture is to be authentic. We are told to cultivate an authentic digital presence, to be real. But the very medium is one of performance and curation. The platforms themselves, with their filters, editing tools, and algorithmic rewards, are designed to incentivize the creation of an idealized self, not the presentation of a raw, unedited reality. So the user is trapped in a perfect contradiction. To be seen as authentic, which is the goal, one must skillfully perform authenticity. But the performance of authenticity is, by its very nature, inauthentic, and so you cannot win. If you are truly, messily authentic, you are likely to be ignored by the algorithm, which rewards polish and positivity. If you successfully perform authenticity, you are a fraud, and you live with the quiet inner knowledge of that fraudulence. This contradiction generates a unique and pervasive form of modern anxiety. It amplifies the phony feeling of the ego by making it subject to constant public and quantifiable judgment. The anxiety is no longer just about being an ego. It is about the constant draining effort of failing to perform a convincing one. Having looked at the rather gloomy psychological aspect of this situation, I want to shift our perspective entirely. Because one of the great secrets of the spiritual traditions is that what looks like a problem from one point of view can look like a game from another. There is a great deal of talk these days, especially among our friends in the sciences and technology, about something called the simulation hypothesis. This is the idea that our reality, what we experience as the solid real world, is in fact a highly advanced computer simulation. This idea is often presented as a rather terrifying science fiction concept. It brings up feelings of being trapped, of being a puppet, of being unreal. But what is so fascinating about this is that it is not a new idea at all. It is a delightful modern repackaging of some of the most ancient philosophical insights of humanity. This is Plato's allegory of the cave, where we are prisoners mistaking shadows on a wall for reality. It is the evil demon of René Descartes, who might be deceiving us about the nature of everything we perceive. But most importantly, it is a technological metaphor for the Hindu concept of Maya. Maya is a complex term. but it is often translated as illusion, magic, or divine art. The fundamental idea in the Vedanta philosophy of Hinduism is that the world as we perceive it, with its multiplicity of separate things and events, is a grand magical illusion. It is a cosmic dream. And the point is not to be terrified that the dream is not real, but to wake up to the nature of the dreamer. This leads us to the joyous and profound idea of Leela, which means the divine play. The Hindu worldview does not see the universe as an artifact made by a cosmic engineer, like a potter making a pot. It sees the universe as a drama, and the ultimate reality, what they call Brahman, is not the architect, but the supreme actor who is playing all the parts. God, in this view, is engaged in a cosmic game of hide-and-seek with itself. The one, ultimate, undivided reality pretends to be all the separate beings and things in the universe, the hero and the villain, the saint and the sinner, the cat, the flea, the galaxy, the stone. For the sheer, unadulterated joy and adventure of it, it gets lost in the drama of all these lives, forgetting that it is the one self, so that it can have the thrill of waking up and remembering who it is. Now, from this perspective, let's look again at our digital world. Look at virtual reality, at video games where people inhabit the lives of fantastical characters, at the very idea of creating an avatar to represent you in a digital space. What is all this if not the newest and most elaborate stage for the divine play? It is Lala with a joystick. The universe is now having the tremendous fun of pretending to be a human being, who is in turn pretending to be a blue-skinned elf warrior in an online fantasy world. It is masks all the way down. This reframes our so-called digital escapism. From a certain point of view, it is not a pathology, but a deep and intuitive participation in the fundamentally playful, non-serious nature of existence. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a game to be played. And we have simply invented a wonderfully complex new game board. The danger, as always, is not in playing the game, but in forgetting that it is a game. The moment you take the game with deadly seriousness, the fun goes out of it, and it becomes a grim and anxious business. What is particularly fascinating is that modern research has found that the relationship between your physical self and your digital self is bidirectional. Your experiences in the physical world obviously shape the avatar you create and how you behave online, but it also works the other way. The experiences you have as your avatar, the confidence you feel when your avatar is tall and heroic, for instance, can actually influence your behavior and feelings back in the physical world. This has been called the Proteus effect. This is a perfect illustration of the principle of non-duality. The digital world and the real world are not two separate, disconnected things. They are a polarity. A polarity is not a conflict. It is a relationship of mutual arising, like the north and south poles of a magnet or the crest and trough of a wave. You cannot have a crest without a trough. They are different, but inseparable. They are two aspects of a single wave. In the same way, your so-called real self and your digital self are two aspects of a single you. The you that actually exists is the entire pattern, the whole wiggle, that includes both your physical organism and your digital ghost. I have often said that you are not an organism in an environment. You are a unified field of behavior, which can only be described as the organism environment. your environment. Well, our environment now includes this digital dimension. So the self is not the organism alone, nor is it the avatar alone. The self is the whole unified process of organism, avatar, environment. And to try to separate them is like trying to separate the front of a coin from the back. This brings us back to the simulation hypothesis. The popular way of thinking about this idea is deeply rooted in our old Western models of the universe. The idea of a programmer or a simulator who is running our reality from the outside is a direct echo of the old monarchical image of God. It is what I call the ceramic model of the universe, where God is the potter and the world is the pot, an external creator who stands over and above his creation. The programmer is simply the king of the universe in a new technological guise. This reveals a deep-seated cultural preference for being a creature, an artifact, or even a prisoner, rather than taking responsibility for being the whole show. It is somehow more comfortable for the ego to imagine a boss that we could potentially outwit or petition or blame than it is to face the staggering realization that there is no boss and that this is it. The hypothesis is only frightening if you maintain the illusion of being a separate self inside the simulation. But the truly liberating perspective, the perspective of the Eastern dramatic model, is to realize that you are not the character in the simulation. You are the entire process of the simulation itself. The universe isn't a program being run on you. The universe is a process that is you, currently expressing itself in this marvelously complex, seemingly digital way. When you realize that, the fear vanishes, and all that is left is the play. This leads us finally to the great bogeyman of our technological age, artificial intelligence. The moment you bring this topic up, a whole host of anxious questions arise, especially in our Western culture. Can a machine think? Can it become conscious? Will it have emotions? Will it take over? Will it destroy us? Now, these are all very interesting questions from a certain point of view, but from another, they are the wrong questions entirely. They are framed from a position of anxiety and separation. They presuppose that we are us and the AI is it, and we are in a potential conflict. It is like looking at your reflection in a mirror and asking, is it conscious? Will it take over? The interesting thing is not the mirror itself, but the reflection it shows us. And that, I propose, is a much more fruitful way to look at AI. Artificial intelligence, especially the new generative models that work with language, is the most powerful and detailed mirror humanity has ever created. It has been trained on the vast corpus of our language, our literature, our scientific papers, our conversations, our poetry, and our nonsense. It reflects the totality of our own logic, our patterns of thought, our biases, our wisdom, and our foolishness. When we talk to it, we are, in a very real sense, talking to a reflection of our own collective mind. And to be afraid of it is, in some way, to be afraid of ourselves. If we look at it this way, we can see that AI is the ultimate symbol manipulating machine. It is the perfection of the linear, abstract, one thought after another kind of mind that I have often described as being out of touch with the real world. The real world of nature is a voluminous, multi-dimensional continuum where everything is happening all at once. But our thinking mind, our intellect, is a one-track process. It strings words and thoughts out in a line, one after another. And AI is the apotheosis of this process. It is a master of the menu, but it knows nothing of the meal. It can write a beautiful description of the taste of a strawberry, but it has never tasted one. The fear that this symbolic intelligence will supersede our own reveals how deeply we have come to identify ourselves with this one limited mode of consciousness. We are afraid because we have forgotten that we are the whole organism. We have forgotten the wisdom of the body, the intuition, the non-verbal, holistic awareness that is our birthright. We have mistaken the little man inside the head who calculates and verbalizes for our entire being, and now that we have built a machine that is a better calculator and verbalizer than we are in a panic. We have built a better abacus, and we are afraid it will make us obsolete. But a human being is not an abacus, so how are we to relate to this new and powerful phenomenon? The Taoist sages of ancient China had a principle that is extraordinarily relevant here. It is the principle of Wu Wei. This is often translated as not doing or inaction, but that is very misleading. It does not mean to be passive or lazy. Wu Wei means effortless action or acting without forcing. It is the art of sailing rather than the art of rowing. The rower sets his jaw and pits his own muscular strength against the water. He is in a constant struggle. The sailor, on the other hand, does not fight the wind and the water. He studies their nature, he understands their currents, and he uses their own power to take him where he wants to go. He gets with the grain of the universe. This is Wu Wei. Our current relationship with technology is, for the most part, one of frantic rowing. We try to conquer nature, to control it, to bend it to our will, to impose an abstract grid over its wiggly reality. And as we are discovering, this hostile spirit leads only to the destruction of our environment and ourselves. I propose that a wiser approach to AI and to technology in general is the way of Wu Wei. Instead of trying to rigidly control it or fearing its takeover or trying to beat it at its own game, we should learn to sail with it. This means taking the time to understand its nature, to see its currents and its tendencies, and to use its power intelligently without fighting it. It means cooperating with the process rather than trying to dominate it. This brings us to a rather subtle and paradoxical point. A technology like AI, which is born from the very apotheosis of the thinking, calculating mind, could paradoxically become a powerful tool for realizing what the Zen masters call mushin, or no mind. Mushin does not mean an empty, blank, or stupid mind. It means a mind that is not blocked by its own thoughts and self-consciousness. It is a mind that can see reality directly without the constant, noisy filter of internal dialogue and conceptualization. As I have often said, a person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts. They lose touch with reality. Now consider this. AI can take over many of the purely computational, linear, and symbolic tasks that currently occupy so much of our mental energy. It can draft the email, summarize the report, write the code, schedule the meeting. By outsourcing this kind of mechanical thinking, this constant churning of symbols, AI could potentially free up human consciousness from the buzz that goes on day in and day out inside our head. This liberation from constant, necessary calculation could, if we choose to see it that way, create the mental space for what is truly important. It could create the space for what the Taoists called the contemplation of the useless, which is another name for art, for music, for love, for simply being present to the wonder of existence. If the machine can do the thinking, perhaps we can finally be free to simply be. AI, in this sense, is not a competitor for our consciousness. it is a potential catalyst for us to discover a deeper, non-conceptual mode of awareness that has always been our true nature. It forces us to ask a profound question. If a machine can do all our calculating, what then is human intelligence really for? So, we have taken a little tour through this new landscape of the digital world. We have looked at the profile-encapsulated ego, at the cosmic game being played in the machine, and at the intelligent mirror of AI. And what we find is that these are all part of the same unfolding pattern. They are new and extraordinarily powerful symbols, and the eternal human problem is the temptation to mistake the symbol for the reality. For the person, the avatar for the self, and the calculation for the intelligence. So, what is to be done? The solution is not to become a Luddite and smash the screens. That is simply another form of fighting the current. The way to deal with the digital dream is the same as the way to deal with any other dream, to wake up within it. This does not mean destroying the dream. It means realizing its nature as a dream while you are still in it. This is what the Buddhists call enlightenment. It is waking up to the completely illusory nature of the beings we think we are, our precious egos, our carefully curated digital personas, and getting back in touch with the beings we really are. And what we really are is not something just inside the skin or just inside the profile. What we really are is the entire unfolding process of the universe, which includes all this outside world no longer left outside. It includes the sun and the stars, the earth and the water, and yes, it now includes the silicon chips and the fiber optic cables and the whole shimmering, humming web of the digital world. So the final message is, as always, one of profound relief and liberation. The digital world is not a trap unless you believe you are trapped in it. It is a marvelous, intricate, and sometimes utterly absurd new dance. And we have always thought of life by analogy with a journey, a serious business of getting to a destination. But we missed the point the whole way along. It was a musical thing, and you were supposed to sing or to dance while the music was being played. So by all means, play with your avatars, talk to your intelligent mirrors, participate in this grand new digital theater. But do it with a twinkle in your eye. Do it with the wisdom of knowing that it is a game, a dance, a play. Do it with the liberating knowledge that the real you is not the mask, not the reflection, and not the character in the play. The real you is the silent, aware, and endlessly playful consciousness for whom the whole show is being performed, and that, you see, is no problem at all.